Eran, there is a category of consciousness studies that involves altered states of consciousness, meditation, seeking enlightenment, transcendence, and Eastern religious ideas. As a brain scientist, how do you subject that to evaluation?
First of all, I experience it, and I certainly enjoy it, and I believe that those states exist. I like yoga. I do it twice a week. It helps me do science. Although when I asked my yoga teacher to tell me how to do better science with yoga, she says, that's the wrong question. That's the way to enlightenment is not to use it for something, but to do it for its own sake, and so on. But it turns out that you could not only do it usefully, but study it. So I'm a materialist, so there's no question it's the brain, it's a brain state. Question is, how do we characterize that brain state? We study it. So we are beginning to do that. And in fact, we are asking the following question. Take experienced meditators, image them, do an EEG while they meditate.
Their brain waves.
Their brain waves while they meditate, and compare it to the brain waves that you get from a person who is not an experienced meditator. In fact, do that before and after meditation. See what changes occurs in their brains before and after they do the meditation. Compare it to the change in a normal person's brain before and after he does meditation. So that tells us about the process, how it is acquired, what brain changes are associated. In fact, one of my colleagues here, Eileen Luders, is looking at the corpus callosums of experienced meditators.
This is the area that communicates
between the two hemispheres, can be now studied anatomically and see where it leads. And the idea is that there are structural changes associated with prolonged experienced meditation.
What would some of these be?
Larger corpus callosum, maybe allowing you to flexibly shift one state to another. They looked at fMRI, functional MRI, a way of looking at brain activity during meditation. Turns out it's not that one particular area works, it's one area does not work. Some temporal lobe hypoactivity.
Becomes quiet.
Becomes more quiet, exactly. Well, if that's true, if those changes can occur, naturally, can we perhaps make them occur experimentally? So that's one thing we're trying to do. I mean, we can change the activity of the corpus callosum by changing the anatomy, create damage. Or we can maybe encourage it by training it to transfer information more flexibly, using something we call EEG biofeedback. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
How would this work?
So how does that work? First of all, is it useful? Well, no question it's useful because they think now that connectivity between different areas is the main problem in closed head injury, in autism, in ADHD. Well, so if we can analyze that connectivity and change it, we are able to do things that drugs don't do very well, with side effects and so on. How do you do that? It's amazing. I don't know how it works, but it works. So you put an electrode over the subject's head. You sample the brain activity. The brain activity can be described in terms of cycles at different frequencies. And you want the patient to reduce certain cycles that indicate hyperactivity and to increase other activity that is cognitive. So you want him to be quiet but focused. You connect the activity of the brain to a screen that has a car driving on it. And then you're sampling the brain of the patient. The patient doesn't control the car. He controls his brain, and the brain controls the car. If he does what we want him to do, he's rewarded by the car going faster. The brain somehow learns this very quickly, and pretty soon the car goes extremely fast, and he's able to change the brain state.
And so the only thing that controls the car are the electrical activities right on the outside of the scalp.
Exactly. And he's able, by feedback, by his own brain looking at the response of the car, to change that brain state without even being consciously aware that he's doing it.
Now, if I were a believer in the Eastern religions or really believed that consciousness had an independent existence, I would say that my independent consciousness was in control of my brain and was able to utilize my brain and controlled it so it it manifested itself in a way that made the car go faster, and it was accomplished its objective.
That's true. You could say that, and I would say that you're wrong. And my proof would be that I'm able to control it better. I can change the brain state by assuming my model, and I don't see how your belief about an external consciousness over which I may have no control can do the job. I like to do yoga, so I go to the same yoga class every quarter because the teacher is very good. But she believes in a theory of yoga that I don't understand. So every quarter before the class starts, the first class actually, she devotes to theory about chakras and energies and shared forces. I don't go to that because I don't want to disagree. I want to be her friend. And then I use her skills as a yoga teacher, and I don't need to believe that theory.
And why do you think that theory is so pandemic in all Eastern religions, and even an increasing number of Westerners, people who've trained in Western medicine, really believe that when you get into the meditation and the altered states, you're really in touch with something fundamentally different, recognizing all the brain correlations, but at the end of the day, there's something fundamentally different there.
Right. So I guess it's that bottom line that I don't agree with. Of course we are changing brain state. Of course we are doing something fundamentally different. But it's not different in kind, as far as I'm concerned, from other brain states. I don't need to go to believe that there is something fundamentally different outside me, external.
That's the real you.
That's the real me, right.
Can you conceive of a way that you could be convinced of that?
No. And the reason is I don't want to be closed-minded. I'm certainly open to the phenomena of telepathy or anything, but it has to have a physical basis. The fact that it can interact with some other substances, yes, I don't see any problem in principle with that, but it has to have some physical explanation.
And an independent consciousness through some meditation process, accessing it, is not there.
At least not useful for me at this time. No, I can see how you could now argue that there is some independent sphere of consciousness created independently in some other realm, and it has some features, and it interacts according to these rules. Fine. But I'm not going to abandon my belief system until this is becoming an alternative that I need to consider seriously.
But you still do your yoga twice a week.
Of course. It helps me. And of course, when my student does an experiment and finds a result that we did not predict, she's willing to throw away my theory. She doesn't have the emotional investment in my theory that I do. But I'm not going to abandon my theory just because one result doesn't fit.